David Roundtree with the Community Foundation of North Central Florida. This is just one of the many things that we have been able to do here in our community to help support and provide capacity building here in the community. If you guys have any questions, we ask that you guys put the questions in the chat. We'll make time to go through the questions. There are several of us monitoring the chat between our staff, our interns, Joyce and myself. We should be good to go. If you have, again, questions, place them in the chat. We're going to go ahead and dive straight in because Joyce has a jam-packed presentation for you today. For those of you who don't know, Joyce Wilson comes to us from Unity Family Community Center out in Williston. She has been an instrumental part in the work that we've been doing here when it comes to capacity building. Joyce right now has brought in over $8.9 million in grant funds over the course of her career. And last year, her operating budget was $1.4 million or $1.4 million of that operating budget came solely from grants. So we've got a great presentation for you. And again, Joyce, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. I am thrilled to be a part of this grant writing series. And if you've been with us for the last two, we're going to have a great time today as well. So as my screen says up front, the idea was our first series. Our grant writing process was the second series. And today we're talking about the success of grant writing. So if you have any questions, please put them in your chat box and we will answer them as we go through the slides as we move forward. Again, thank you for joining us today. I know everybody has a packed schedule. And this is what I love to do. I love community work. I love impacting communities, and I love helping people impact their communities as well. And this is my disclaimer that anything in my grant writing series is not a policy of the Community Foundation or is endorsed by Unity Family Community Center, which is my employer. And our series our outcomes has been the same from the very beginning. It's that you get knowledge to apply for upcoming funding opportunities with the Community Foundation, as well as learning how to apply for external funding as well. So we have a little knowledge check. For those of you who have been with us for the last series 1 and series 2, we have a little poll. We want you to answer a couple questions. So for poll 1 is, which item is listed on the grant readiness checklist that we talked about in our first grant writing series? Was it state and federal regulations, executive director's bio, or federal quality taxes? Which one of those are actually in the grant readiness checklist that we went through?
Looks like we are getting responses now. We'll give everyone a chance. If you have not seen it, it should have popped up on your screen. It'll be in addition to the PowerPoint. You'll see it there. There's 18 of us have answered.
Okay, awesome.
We'll give it another 15 seconds. In 3, 2, 1, we'll close the poll. Results are up. Joyce.
Awesome. Great, great. You're correct. State and federal registration is one of the items that's on the checklist.
Fantastic.
Then here's the checklist again. It's the second bullet, state and federal registrations. I hope everybody had the opportunity to go back and check the items for your readiness. So in the chat box, I know we're going to be monitoring, has everybody actually reviewed the checklist again and make sure that they have everything they need before applying for grants? So if you did, let David know in the chat box so we can look at those as well. Our next poll is coming from our grant series number 2, which was grant writing and searching for funding. So which is a component of the grant application? Is it a statement of need, you serve, board members, or your annual report? So let us know which one of those is a component of the grant application that we discussed last month.
All right, it looks like everyone has answered. We're going to go ahead and end the poll now. And I'll share the results.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome. And you're correct, statement of need. It's where you decide what is the problem of your community? What does the data say about your community? So that's where you prove that you really need the money, that your community really has a problem that you need to solve. Awesome. There it is. There's one of the that we discussed last time. These are all the topics that we discussed in our grant series number 2. And everybody likes to receive a letter that says you are now being awarded this grant application. And when everybody get excited, we get so excited when we get that one letter, that one email that says you've been funded, you get the award, and we do cheers like on the left on the screen. We jump and we hollow and we do all those wonderful things. And then once it settled down, and this is your first grant, you ask yourself, now what? What do I do now? Now that I have this great letter, what do I do now? To prepare for this, this presentation, I took some monitoring tools that I've gone through for years from several different agencies and compiled information that will make you successful in doing managing grant applications. So what I done, I looked at the federal monitoring tool, look at a couple of state monitoring tools, different state agencies, and pull out the simplest things that if you're just starting out, these are some things that you could do for small grants as well as large grants as well. So we're gonna have a breakout room now to talk about, you've been notified with your grant application, you got the award, you had the cheers, you cried, all those different things. Now what? So these are the questions in your breakout rooms. What are your next steps before you start your new programming discussion? Who needs to be notified once you get that letter? And if you're a grant recipient of other funding, based on your previous experience, what are some lessons you learned that you could talk about in your room that would benefit the others in your group? So we're gonna do a 5-minute breakout room, and you will have one spokesperson from each group. We'll talk about the questions. So David, drum roll.
So I'm gonna go ahead and send you guys on to your breakout rooms. You'll have representation from the foundation or with Joyce. You'll either be led by Jessica, Sophie, Nancy, Joyce, or myself. Go ahead and accept the rooms. We'll be in there from anywhere between 5 to 7 minutes or so, and we'll go from there. I'm gonna go ahead and open the rooms now. Go ahead and accept your rooms, and then we'll see you guys all in there. Hey, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back.
I thought you left us.
No, I joined another room. I joined the room. So we're going to go ahead and have you guys share from your breakout rooms. I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone. And then if you are the representative for your room, we'll go ahead and have you unmute. So that being said, we'll start with my room and we'll have Jody go first.
So we talked a little bit about, what were the questions, David?
No worries. First question, what are your next steps before you start your new programming?
We kind of launched immediately into who we'd like to make sure is notified. But before that, we talked about going back to the guidelines in the application and making sure that we're really paying attention to what we said we were going to do and doing those things, and then thinking about who needs to know. So board, press, staff, and then sort of things we found helpful to keep us on track, meeting with the project team more regularly, as well as making sure you don't wait till the last minute to collect data, doing it as you go, and looking at reporting guidelines a little bit further out from when you have to do the report.
Fantastic. How about, let's go ahead and do Joyce's room.
We basically said many of the same things: CEO, board, the accountant, the program manager, and so that everybody is on board. They know what's in the grant, what the deliverables are, and you can track and monitor for reporting purposes those things.
All right. Nancy, your room. Thank you, Becker.
All right.
Looks.
We were so deep in conversation, I forgot to assign a person. So I'm going to try to put Joyce on the spot. New tech now, Joyce. Would you be willing to speak for our group?
I guess, yes, but we do, ours
Great.
is a little bit different than the rest of you because you're bigger than we are. So in our group, when I asked, I said that we look towards whomever we've asked for the grant for to serve, we go to them to be setting up a program and trying to get that done. And we also were the same thing. You need to keep records and you need to start right away so that when you get to your final report and you have to, or you need to keep your documentation in case you're ever audited. So all those things have to be set up, but we don't have a lot of personnel like some of the rest of you do. So it's kind of easy for us because we're like 3 or 4 people and that's it. But we're more concerned about the grant that we asked for, that we get it arranged with whomever we're going to do that particular project with. So that's basically what we talked about.
Awesome. Up next, we have Sophie's group.
Hi, so we also kind of ran out of time before we could elect someone to present before returning to the main room. So Cynthia, would you mind speaking about our session?
Oh, Cynthia, you're on mute.
Oh, okay, there I am. Pardon me. We spoke about letting our team know, what their roles were, redefining, what their roles are, or not redefining, but really clarifying what their roles will be. And we talked about planning as it relates to reporting, making sure that we had an Excel spreadsheet set up to track what we were doing, and really being able to identify what each dollar would be spent on. So we were more in the planning mode, and then reporting, and then making sure that we had a great marketing strategy for identifying our targets, and then being able to get media to be able to present to that target market. And that was
I am media. Hey, that was awesome. Fantastic. Let's see. And last but not least, we have Miss Jessica.
Hello. I would like Shonda to talk. She's still here?
I'm still here. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So basically we talked about what would be needed. The first thing we said that we will actually need to notify our board. I'm sorry for the background noise. We will actually need to notify our board, and then we will actually need a specific timeline as to what we will be doing with the grant. I'm sorry, my phone keeps going to mute. I'm sorry. So basically we talked about what will be needed as far as contacting the board, notifying the board of directors, and also coming up with a specific timeline as to how we're going to basically time everything out, because the timeline with the grant is very important.
Fantastic. Fantastic. All right. Thank you guys for sharing what took place in your rooms, and we'll go ahead and have Joyce start again.
That was great comments from everyone, especially for beginners. They get to hear what other people are doing to start out. So once they get a grant, they know everybody's on different levels on this call. So it's great to hear from people that have grants, of larger grants, and then smaller people had small grants, how they starting out as well. Great conversation. Okay. One of the first things for me, even though I wrote the grant, I read it several times once I get that letter, because, months go by. When you write a grant, months and months go by, and you wrote another grant and another grant, and you wrote another grant. So now you go back and read that one before. So my thing is that I read that grant application several times till I basically memorize it. Also, read the grant award. There are some stipulations in there that they have that you must complete within a certain time period once you get that award. So please always get excited, but please read the fine print. I call it the fine print. Those are things that you have to do. And a lot of people said about their board, having a board meeting, the board has accept your award You know, in the state of Florida and other states, they don't take all the money that the federal government give them come down to the states. So always have your board accept those grants as well. And I heard someone mention timeline. It's very important to have a timeline of how you're going to implement the whole process once you get that award. And if you got a grant and you got staff, you're hiring staff, you got to advertise those positions, you got to interview those, but you got to hire those positions. You have to have time for that as well. And if your type of program you're having, you may want to have some trained staff with once you hire them, you got to do that as well. Most importantly, your physical control, having your financial information intact, accounting system, your bank accounts, all those different things. Strategies, someone talked about recruitment. Make sure you're recruiting what's the kids that you say you're going to be in your grant, or adults that's going to be in your grant as well. What's your recruitment strategies? You got to look at that as well. Where's your partners? When you wrote the grant, they said they was going to work with you. Now you're 5 months down the road when you get the award. Are they still willing to work with you? Or do you have to find new partners now? Maybe those partners don't want to do that service anymore. You got to go back and look at that as well. Make sure your agency is covered. Most grants require, larger grants require you to submit your insurance certificate to them before you even start doing your services. Make sure your lease agreements are done if possible. And your organization chart, that will tell you who you need to notify first based on your org chart. Every organization should have an org chart. Please make sure you have one. And like I said before, there are specific requirements within the grant in the first 60 to 90 days. If you ever, some of you may have gotten federal funds before, there's a 90-day period. If you're in the new grant, you have 90 days to get implemented. You have 90 days to do all those different things in there. So timelines are very important to stay on track once you get, once you receive a grant award. Like I say, if you had someone write the grant for you, and you pay someone to write the grant for you, and they just handed you the grant, you now have to implement what that grant writer wrote without, some grant writers write without talking to the agency to say, what do you want to do? Some people just give people a RFP, say, write this grant for me, and some have no idea what's in it until they get the award. Now you're responsible for implementing something that someone else wrote. So if you have a grant writer, please make sure you're talking to them on a regular basis. They're talking to you during the whole process, because once you get that grant award, the grant writer is not responsible anymore. The agency is. So make sure you talk to your grant writer if you hire a grant writer to talk with you on a regular basis during that whole process, so you clearly understand what's going into that grant. Accountability. These are some things that as an agency we've gone through. The approval process for the board, the management, our management team, personnel, documentation, everything is documented. I tell my staff, if it's not documented, we never did it. Record keeping is very important. Reporting is important. Your due dates, internal, you have due dates, external, you have due dates for your provider, but internal, you have due dates as well. If you have a report that's due on the 30th, that's external. For me, it's due on the 20th. Internal. So make sure it's done by the due dates. Compliance is you meet all the requirements of your funder. Non-compliance is that they found something out of order. Policy and procedure, every agency have policy and procedures to reflect, because those are some things that once you get in the upper state, federal, they are asking for a copy of your policy and procedures when they visit you. They always have your physical controls intact, because that's very important. Your accounting systems, what type of accounting systems you use. They are not really accepting the Excel spreadsheets for your accounting system, so please use a known accounting system. New hires, you have more than 4 people to hire. You must use the state hire process as a system you go into to hire a new hire. And E-Verify, that's required now, even with state agencies. If you ever apply for state agency, E-Verify is to verify the person that you're hiring is eligible to work in the United States. Any questions? Okay.
One question, Joyce, which kind of speaks to exactly what you were just talking about. Is QuickBooks accepted?
Yes. Actually, that's what our agency used. Not saying that's the perfect thing to use, but I found out that some of the local banks that we've gone to I'll just give a history of some grants we have that are reimbursement. Agencies actually go get funding up front so we can cover the cost till we get reimbursed. And the only acceptable accounting document they would take was QuickBooks for our profit and loss and our balance sheets.
Fantastic. That's it. Oh, wait. Yep, that's it.
Okay, good. In your grant application, I said, go back and read that very, very well, because if you don't serve the kids that you're serving, you're definitely out of compliance. So make sure you know what your target population is. Make sure they're eligible. I know sometimes people get enticed and like, okay, this person will fit this person, but make sure what you have in your grant application is what the people you're serving. Make sure they reside in target area that you talk about. If you listed East Gainesville, and most of your population from North Gainesville, you're not in compliance. So make sure you document how you serve your kids as well. If it's kids that you're serving, adults, it's the same process. In your grant application, there's a component called approach, and that's where you're going to outline everything that you're going to do as far as your grant proposal, as far as your program design. These are some of the things that, from a monitoring tool, these are some of the things that they look at. Some of the things that they look at, I didn't put all of them in there. Your program description, are you actually doing what's in your grant? Your service activities, are you actually doing the services that you say? How are you going to document those? Are you doing the services at the time that you say you're going to do them? Your operating hours, that's administrative and also programmatic. Do you have the appropriate equipment and furnishing that you say you needed in your budget that fits your program? Do the services actually meet the grant requirements that you're providing? Are you serving age-appropriate kids? Are you meeting the required training that's stated in your application? If you're using an evidence-based programming for more state and federal programs, if you're using that, you have to have a developer provide training to your staff as well, or a trainers local. So that is a required training. Are you actually have sign-in sheets? Are you identifying your services as dates based on what you put in your application? Like I said, go back and read your applications. Everything is laid out in your application. Your partnerships. Do you have a memorandum of understanding with them to say what their roles and responsibilities are? Believe it or not, they do ask for those. Where are your partnership letters? Where are your MOUs? What's your recruitment strategies? Or you're actually recruiting through schools, the newspaper, television, radio, all those things must be documented as well. And how are you keeping kids in your program? That's another thing you have to look at. What's your retention strategies? How are you planning on keeping these kids in your program throughout to make sure they complete your program? Those are some strategies and things that they do look at when they come out to visit you. Or now, since it's COVID, they're doing desk reviews. So to all those that has a history of grant writing and grant compliance, we're going through now desk reviews. Everything is paper. We're tearing down trees regularly in our office now. Any questions on this slide?
There is actually a question on the last slide that came in. They are asking, how extensive should the client serve documentation be? Will emails serve, or do we need signed letters on letterhead or another format?
Repeat the question again.
Yeah.
Client serve. You said
Yeah.
client
How extensive should the documentation be on client serve? Will emails serve, or do they need to have signed letters on letterhead?
Based on the services you're providing, it's different. It's not all the same. It's not a cookie cutter way. If you're serving youth and your client serve, you want to document when you did those services. You want to have it in writing that they would sign off that you provide those services. If you yourself have an email say I did the services, that's not really documentation. That's something you said. But kids actually have to sign a document that they came to receive services, even if it's adults as well.
That is it for now.
Okay. Any questions on this slide?
None so far.
Okay, great. Evaluation, how do you know what you're doing works? There's very different ways to tell that based on what's in your application, based on what you plan on doing with your services. Sometimes people use pre and post tests that's already generated from your program that you're providing. If it's evidence-based, they already have pre and post tests already populated for you. You can do focus group, have conversation with kids and document that as well. You can also do surveys, satisfaction surveys. If they, do they like your services? What bad about my services? Give feedback for your organization. or it could be surveys about your services, the type of service you have. It can be surveys about your facilitator. It can be surveys about who's doing your programming, all different surveys. You can interview kids, you can interview parents, you can interview staff. You can have statements from the students, I learned statements, something like that, or just written statements about what you're doing. Also, your attendance will be evaluation. Did they actually attend the entire time based on your grant application? Did they do 12 sessions or did they do 2 sessions? Why didn't they stay in the program? Why did they leave? Those are also things that you can look at as well. And also you can look at the number of service hours each kid came to your program. If you have a 12-week service program and each kid get an hour session, you can document it that way. You can document the number of kids served by your client serve, your document, your sign-in sheets, your database that you put all your information in pertaining to services. You can develop a website, document it that way. You can document your Excel spreadsheet to keep the number of kids you serve. There's various ways you can do that. It's just being creative in how you document that. But whatever you have in the system must be documented by sign-in sheets. Registrations is virtual, kids registering to take your virtual section. So everything has to be documented. Also, another way you can document is the number of sessions held. Like I said, if you have 12 sessions, they attended 4, then that eliminates the number of service hours you did for those kids for that month. So if your grant says I'm going to serve 1,300 kids a year, and I initiated 1,300, but only 50 completed my services, your percentage is very, very low. So you got to find a way how you're going to fix that. The best way to do it is look at your evaluations every month, every quarter. It's good not to wait till the end of the year to look at your evaluation process, because at the end of the year it's too late, because now you're doing your annual reporting. So it's good to look at that every month, every quarter, to make sure you have something in place that you can do systems improvements or program improvement sessions. So if you serve parents, document the number of parents you're serving as well. So these are some of the things that we looked at from the monitoring tools that they look at when they come out to view your agency, that you can use as part of evaluating your program. I know there's other things that you can do, but these are just some of the things that you can do to help evaluate your program.
Joyce, we have 2 great questions that came in. One kind of pertains to the previous slide. So we'll give some folks, if you have any questions, go ahead and submit them in the chat now. But what if an organization receives a grant and something like COVID hit and you were unable to serve your population the way you intended and stated? You stated that you would on your application. How does one pivot or justify the pivot?
I can answer that so well. One of our programs, I use one of our programs, COVID hit, we could not serve kids for like 3 months because schools were shut down, everybody's locked in. So what happened, I wrote a letter to my contract manager and said, COVID's here, this is what's happening, can't serve number of kids as designated in our grant, can't do it this amount of kids per month. We need to do an alternative method to our services. So that's how, and I outlined what we were able to do in that letter. I outlined what we're able to do. We can do virtual, we can cut our kids because we can only hold this many people in our building. So that's one way you could do it, is write your contract manager, whoever your funder is, who's over your grant, write them those letters. And now they're very, I won't say lenient, but they are acceptable to alternative methods because of COVID. And we're still under that same alternative method now. It was supposed to be up in January, but I received another letter saying they're extending it to March. This month, I got another letter saying they extended it to May. So it's acceptable. Just let them know what you're doing different and what you're planning to do to serve some kids, not the number that you say you thought you could serve due to safety.
Fantastic. Next question. If you only get partial funding of your request, is it ever appropriate to not accept a grant? Is that a big no-no?
Not to accept a grant?
Yes.
Repeat that question again.
If you only get partial funding of your request, is it ever appropriate to not accept the grant?
And that's based on the agency, your agency needs. If you, let's say you ask for $100,000, you don't see 50. I'm using example. you only see 50. Can you operate under that $50,000? Not at the full scale, but a smaller scale. That's the consideration you have to look at. Can you operate that grant under a smaller scale?
Okay. The next question, which will kind of tie into what you just said, what happens with the funding when you need to make adjustments?
If some grants, you would talk to your contract, build a relationship with your contract manager, whoever's the contact person for your grant, build a relationship with them, let them know what you're doing, if you have any changes that need to be made. Some grants, they allow you to do changes based on COVID now, everything's changing. Also, if you have funding issues, let them know. They'll ask you to document it. And usually they're very lenient about what's going on right now. If you're in that process, if you're in that stage right now, just let your contract manager or your funder know what's going on with you and put it in writing, but stick to what you have in writing.
I keep trying to mute myself, unmute myself. Fantastic. Joyce, those are all the questions we have right now. Again, everyone, if you do have questions, please submit them to the chat, and we'll go from there. Actually, there is one other question that just came in. Will there be any penalties if a grant isn't fully used?
There's no penalties. You just, that fund would go, based on the agency, let me say that, based on the agency, based on the way that your funds are allocated to you. If you are, there are different, I didn't go into this in my grant training, there are different types of cost reimbursement. There's fixed price, there's all in one lump sum payment. If you receive an all lump sum payment grant, all your funds got up at front and you didn't spend those, you have to write a check back to the agency. If you have a fixed cost grant, they pay you for so many kids per year, per month. If you have that type of grant, if you didn't spend all your dollars at the end of the year, you have to write a check back to the agency. So usually if you don't spend all the money, you have to give the money back.
Great. Question is, if there is grant money left, is there a possibility, which you just answered, for it to be used for another source? And then she responded with, never mind, you just answered.
But there are times when, like, I'll use ours for example. With COVID, there were 4 months that our staff didn't travel. We traveled as far as Orlando, Palm Beach. They didn't travel. So I had funds left over. And that's the federal government, which is totally different. I asked for a carryover request. The funds that I had left over, I asked for a carryover request to get approval to carry that money over to this year to serve the counties that I didn't serve last year.
Fantastic. And then the last question that we have that just came in is, does that make you ineligible for future grants?
No, it doesn't.
It does not.
No.
Muted myself. We are good to go.
Breakout time. So in our breakout rooms, your application is going to be funded. What's next? So in our breakout, we're going to talk about how do you measure the effectiveness of your organization and your program? What tools do you use? And what are any outside the box ideas that you have and you want to share with your group? So let's think about that for the newbies that's coming on board and our existing grant providers that's been around for a while. We can share some information with them as well to help them. So what I found is that we have some people in our groups that never received a grant before, but they need our help and we can help them. So David.
We're gonna go ahead and, let me make sure I'm unmuted, which I am. We're gonna go ahead and open all rooms. You guys should be in the same rooms you guys were in before. But again, we'll go ahead and give you that minute warning before we stop and try to nominate someone to come back and share what you guys have learned in the room together with one another. Opening the rooms now, and you guys should be able to accept. Moving forward, there we go.
Different types of program reporting that is for accountability, and we talked about having matrix, and I mentioned for our 2-on-1 program that I'm working on grants for funding is we get reports from a monthly report showing every phone call, every service, and what every provider provided. So we have accurate data that we can supply for the for funding purposes for accountability. And then there's also quarterly reports that a lot of the organizations receive. And they talked about, getting surveys from their clients, patients, and what have you, and use that as support documentation as well. Did I miss anything, Joyce?
No, you covered it all. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Jessica, you want to go for your group or have your group go?
Teresa will be speaking for our group.
Jessica, who was that?
Teresa?
I was talking to myself. Didn't they say that the most frequent words were "you're on mute"? In 2020, excuse me. Our group shared that usually within the grant application itself, any good investor wants to know how you're going to measure your outcomes and what tools you're going to use. So if you had specified those in the grant, that of course you would want to follow those. And then we talked about that even some investors will provide you a chart or tools or something that they want you also to put your outcomes in. So we would use those tools. Our group was very varied in the number of years we had been in service. We had many groups that were just beginning or just waiting for approval in our group. So we didn't have a lot of tested measures, but we had great conversation.
It's fantastic. Sophie, your group.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have Charlie speak for our group.
So one of the bigger things that we talked about was how do we evaluate our organization and programs. And I use the example, so at Girls Place, on all of our registration forms for any of our programs, we ask our families, what can Girls Place do better? And they usually tell us, what could we provide more of? And then also, what do they love about Girls Place? And that helps us see what our strengths are. So within athletics, they usually say what other sports they want offered, or within our after school program, usually what do they love about what we do? So we provide a lot of academic help. We also provide some mental health services, and a lot of our families really enjoy those aspects. And so it helps us see what direction we can do better, and also how well we're growing as an organization.
Fantastic. Nancy.
Yes, I'm going to hand it over to Shireen.
Good morning, everyone. So we talked about that it's really essential that we are engaging our funders all throughout the process, if possible, so that way they're not just only hearing from us at the beginning when they give us the money and at the end when we provide a report. So for instance, saving our promotions and marketing, so that way we can show all the different ways that we've showcased the organization or the funder all throughout, and also like inviting them to various events or activities that's going on, so that way the funder is aware that these activities are taking place. And then also using a couple of different ways to track effectiveness of the programs. What we talked about was gathering feedback from the attendees, collecting surveys that ask questions such as like, what did you know about this topic before? What did you learn about this topic afterwards? Also saving testimonials from the group that you're serving. We also talked about tracking attendance and specifically retention rates. So how many of the population that you're serving is coming back for services, because that indicates a need. Then we talked about a variety of tactics to demonstrate the effectiveness of our program. So more or less like the theme that came out of our group was showing in addition to telling. So just telling them and giving the report is not enough, but showing, pictures of the population that we're serving, showing, pictures of the attendees in action. So not just like pose shots, but like showing those types of action shots, also sharing stories, testimonials, and even vision boards. So those were what we discussed in our group.
Fantastic. And last but not least, we'll go with my group. I popped into my group late, so who wants to come off mute for my group and share? Luke, there he is.
All right, thank you. So I think we kind of talk about it in two ways. First of all, ways we measure success that are more conventional, things like surveys, sign-in sheets, pre-post test, and then whatever other requirements you have. But then based off of those requirements, we can be more creative and find ways to meet the needs. And I think the other theme is the out of the box examples that we gave were ones where we went out to the community. So that could be something like, first of all, a door-to-door survey, community needs assessment, and then even having events to find out about the needs, such as transportation or events that really draw in people, having parties, pool parties, carnival, giving people ice cream and popsicles, or having a pop-up tent just to draw people in. And then, of course, there's also going kind of in the other direction is having virtual events like what we've been doing now. And that's another way of reaching people, not just with the pandemic or whatever limitations you have, but also just getting people who might not come out to events otherwise.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. Joyce, that's all our groups. We'll go ahead and have you continue with the presentation.
Great breakout room conversation. Learned a lot. I like the out of the box ideas. I think the pandemic has put us in an out of box mindset that we can no longer do the things that we normally do. So we have to think outside the box. Great ideas. There you go. Okay. Once we, if your grant is called for personnel in your budget, and you have at least people that you're going to employ in your application, these are some of the things that they look at for personnel files. The acceptance letter signed off on, your job description of the position that you reference in your grant application, reference check, the resume. Some people still doing applications. That's okay as well. Make sure the person are qualified, have the qualifications listed in your organizational capacity, and that's where this information would go, or who you're hiring, how is the level of service, what's the percentage of time they would spend on this particular grant application. Make sure you have the number of staff and the positions outlined. Your timesheets, you have to look at those as well. Background screening, favorable before you hire them. Make sure that's done before you give an acceptance letter. And it has to be level 2, which is a FDLE, FBI background screening. Some people, if you had them in your organization and they've been there more than 5 years, you might have to rescreen them, have a new background screening in your personnel files. Volunteers have to have the same information in their files as well. Have proof of the specific training that they're going to be required to have in your application. Make sure you have a W-4 in their files for employee withholding taxes. Make sure you have an I-9 in there, employment verification form. And with that form, they have to produce a driver's license, some type of ID, a social security card, passport, something with an ID on it. And now, if you're doing state dollars, state grants, I don't know if local grants required now, I'm not sure. You have to do E-Verify. That is Homeland Security to verify that that person is eligible to work in the United States. For E-Verify, just a little bit on that. Once you set up an account, you have to do a training, a little PowerPoint, you can do a training after that. It's for you to get the account. You have to go through this training process to set up your account. In your file also, and E-Verify will tell you once you put in their social security number, their driver's license, the place of birth, you will know they're sending your thing back saying they're eligible to work in the United States, and you print that off, put it in their files. Emergency contact, that's optional. Equipment acknowledgement, if you're giving them equipment to use bought by the agency in that grant, let them know that you gave them that, gave them the use of the equipment. Policy procedures acknowledgement, that they've read your policy and procedure for the agency or employee handbook. You have an acknowledgement that they did read it and they signed off on it. And also you will have their staff evaluations, their staff performance in there as well. These are just some of the things that were listed on all those monitoring reports that I pulled from. Are there any questions?
Yeah, Joyce, one question came in asking, isn't there a formula for calculating FTE?
Not to my knowledge. It may be, but I've never used it.
Fantastic. All right, that's it for now.
Okay, cool. Your partners, we talked about them earlier in your grant application. You will notify them as well that you did receive the grant. And also, if you didn't receive a MOU with them at the beginning of when you did your proposal or your grant application, go back and revisit that with them again to make sure that they're still able to do what's listed before. Remember, you're talking about a 4 or 5 month period since you first wrote your grant. Also invite them to your board meeting, your award meeting, and let them talk about what they're going to do with the board. Let the board hear what they got to say. If your contractors, your partners are contracted people that's going to be doing services, make sure you have a contract with them, that you have the exact amount that's in your grant application. Make sure you outline the services that are going to be provided, what the reports they're to give to you, how you're going to structure the invoices, how you're going to pay them monthly, quarterly. They have to be in compliance as well, because remember, the grant is awarded to your agency, not the contractors. So you have to make sure that the contractors are abiding by the same rules that you are as a grant recipient. And also make sure you have one contact person for that specific contract. I can give an example of, I have 4 contractors now, the exact same process that I go through for the grant requirements. Those same requirements are in their contract. They all report the same. They all have the same invoice type scale. Their reports are structured the same. So everything is the exact same. So if I'm audited, when they go to each contractor's facility, their documents look exactly the same as the master, as the grantee, as my files. Their files look exactly like my files. Any questions?
No questions over here.
Okay. Physical control. Make sure your agency have an accounting policy. So how your invoices will be paid, how your staff will be paid, who will be able to sign your checks, will everything be direct deposit? So make sure you have that in place as a policy. Make sure that the more grants you get, the more bank accounts you're going to have. So we have about 7 bank accounts. So I don't believe in putting grants and top of grants in all one thing, no. So make sure you're not commingling funds. But what happens is once you put all those dollars in there together, it's hard to determine what's being paid from what. So if you have separate bank accounts, you know, you write checks from that one bank account is geared directly toward that particular grant. Because what happens is you put all your money in one lump sum. When one agency comes to visit you, they have access to everything, because now you lump all monies into one and you can't determine whose funding is this and whose funding is that. So make sure you have separate bank accounts. It's much easier. And what I've done is not saying it's a concrete thing to do, but on my bank accounts, I put the name of the program that's in my grant application. That's one way I do that to keep me sane, but make sure the person that's over your payroll, that does your payroll, make sure your taxes are paid. Make sure that's done because that is definitely something that you can be out of compliance with. And make sure your general ledger accounts are set up just as your budget is. It makes life easy for you. It makes it easy for them to review your documents. Once they call for your documents of send me a financial report, it's outlined exactly like your budget is outlined. If you have personnel, you have travel, you have contractors, you have office supplies, you have rent, make sure it's outlined exactly like your budget is. It makes life easier for you. Also, make sure your contracts are signed based on your budget, and make sure you stick to the budget that's listed. Make sure, we all know grants are restricted. We all look for unrestricted money all the time, but unfortunately that's not feasible all the time. So make sure you stick to your restriction that's in your budget. Some budget funders will let you deviate your categories. You can't, if it's not approved, you can't use a new category if you want to make changes. If you have a grant, most federal grants, they let you move 25% of your award without approval. But some state programs, they only let you move $1,000 between approved categories. Locally, I'm not sure. Some local dollars I've gotten, I didn't need to move any money. So I know the larger the grant is, sometimes there's a shift that you have to make that you will let your funder know as well. So make sure your grant award states what you have to do once you need to move money around. So make sure you read those guidelines. Expenditure documentation, make sure you can document every dollar that's spent. It's very important that you document your invoices, you document your check, make sure you have your bank statements are done. I'm going through a full single audit about 2 years ago. It is tedious, and you have to have a receipt, a document for everything. If you have canceled checks, if you have void checks, make sure you keep them as well. That's important. Just some helpful hints on things to keep in track. Make sure someone is reconciling your bank accounts every month. Make sure your bills are paid on time, because you do have grant money to pay your bills. So make sure your bills are paid. And make sure you have one person, not say one, make sure you have someone designated as your physical person. That's the person who can answer any questions about your finances at any time. And that's the person that you want to, if you ever get audited, ever get a monitoring visit, that's the person you want at the table when it comes to talking about your money. Because if you're not familiar with your money and you're sitting at the table and they talk about finances and you keep stumbling over your questions and answers, they're going to know that you don't really know what's going on with your finances. So make sure your expenditures meet state, local, and federal guidelines based on your funding, your funder. Any questions?
No questions. We're good to go.
Okay.
Oh, actually, Joyce, I completely lied. There are 2 questions for you. First, is the bank account based on the size of the grant or regardless of the amount?
For me, I can only speak from regardless of the amount.
Fantastic. Another question about the bank accounts. Do you close the account once the grant is over?
I change the name. If I get a new grant, if I close it out and there's no money in there and I get a new grant, I change the name of the grant. I change the name of the account.
Fantastic. Are the accounts by program or by investor? Do multiple investors go in one account?
By program, by funder. I want to say that, by funder.
By funder. All right, on to reporting.
Awesome. In our discussion, I think several people talked about reporting as well in evaluation.
Excuse me, before we go into reporting, could I ask you a question, Joyce, about bank accounts? So we have a committee that's part of a 501c3, and we're working on a very specific project, is to erect a monument in honor of the 3 Black men who are the founders of Melbourne. And so we have a sub-account that says Founders Monument. So our grant writing is going to be for that particular project. If we get grants from different locations, it doesn't mean we have to keep changing the name, do we?
No, as long as you have a, in your accounting system, go back to this. I'm just saying, if you have a large grant, $100,000, $50,000, I would definitely keep that separate. But as long as your accounting system can track by each funder, I'm gonna say that. Example, the monument, if you get it from Department of State, historical grant, one of those grants, you have in your accounting system, you have to make sure it's marked, classified that way. Am I making them? And if you get another place that give you $10,000 and it's Duke Energy, you make sure your accounting system document every invoice that you spend must tie back to one of those funders.
Makes sense.
Okay, reporting. Make sure you have something to keep you track of the deadlines, because we all get very, very busy at times and deadlines do pass by us sometime. So make sure you have a place that you have your deadlines posted so you can see them on a regular basis, or in your calendar on your phone, and calendar in your computer, or on in your office on a board that says reporting. Some funders, you do reporting monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, annual. As someone has spoke about, sometimes they give you a format to follow. Make sure you keep that format for that particular funder. And there's some smaller funders, they don't give you an outline, you create your own. So that's different. So make sure you read the fine print again in your grant award or contract award, what it says about reporting. I would say if reporting is not required, some people give you money that doesn't require a report. I would send them one anyway, just to show your appreciation of what you actually did with their dollars. If they didn't ask you to give a report, just say you got $1,000 from someone and they didn't ask you to report anything, I would send them something anyway to let them know, this is what I did with those funds. These are the kids we serve, or these are adults we serve, and these are the activities we actually done, pictures, book, anything like that, just to show them that you actually did something with their dollars. Also, reporting is a great way to look at time to do program changes and improvements with your funder as well. Make sure they're done on time. I think I talked about that earlier. Make sure your physical reports are accurate, and it's all related to the funder budget that you have. Make sure your programmatic reports outline you serve, the things that we talked about earlier. And some supporting documents can be pictures. I think Ms. Dream, I see Dream in the back, I remember that. She talked about the pictures, that's good to have, news articles. Those are great things to have for reporting as well. I know one funder doesn't require us to do any reporting, but we actually put together a small book, and we had the kids write in the book, and we did the pictures and the dates and time that we did services with their dollars, and that's what we gave them along with a written report. So we received a letter back saying they was appreciative of us sending us that information, even though they didn't require it. And also, reporting is a great time to talk about challenges and barriers. I think someone talked about the number of kids served in the pandemic. This is a great time to break all those challenges out and the barriers that you're having getting into schools or other facilities, and let them know these are your challenges, these are barriers. Let's talk about it. I'm going to give you and then your letter, you said I'm going to give you a call and reference this section 2B of challenges and barriers. So they know to look at that section of your report very well. Any questions?
Fantastic. We are good to go.
Awesome. One last poll, we're winding it up. The last poll is, what documentation is needed for budget expenditures? Is it invoices and canceled checks, or is it Excel worksheet that you can show them, or a written explanation of expenditures?
We're in our final 10 minutes here, folks, so stick with us. We've got just this last poll. Well, once everyone gets the questions answered, we'll go ahead and close it out. We'll close it out in about 15 seconds, and then we'll go from there. Looks like we have just about everyone has answered, so we'll close in 3, 2, 1. Oh, Joyce. Oh, just kidding. I clicked one more button. There you go. There are the results.
The correct answer is invoice and cancel checks. That is the correct answer.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Okay. Compliance equals success. That's the main thing. Be in compliance with what your funders are requesting in your grant application, your grant award. Once you do that, you have program success. So, do we have any additional questions? I have enjoyed these last 3 months with you all. It's been a pleasure to share the information that I know to you all to help impact your communities. I hope it was helpful to you. I hope you gained some knowledge and learned some new things from different people besides me. And that's the reason for the breakout rooms. I wish you all the best of luck. I wish everybody on this call receive a grant this year. David is working on that, yeah. And please let us know when you do receive award. We really want to know that you actually receive award. It gives us great pleasure to know that we're actually impacting communities, and that's what we want. We want to see things change.
Joyce, do receipts serve in a place of cancel checks on your question?
Receipts?
Yeah, if somebody sends you a receipt that they received payment, can you send that in place of a cancel check? Because cancel checks can take a while.
You can go to your bank and get the cancel check.
So a receipt is not satisfactory?
Not from my history. From being through it, they actually want cancel checks.
Okay.
Everyone, thank you again to Joyce for joining us today and joining us for this entire series. I'm going to go ahead and share the survey for the grant writing series. If everyone could please just take a moment, click that link, and share your thoughts, feelings, expressions on how the series went. It's extremely important to us and helps us craft the programming that we do here at the Community Foundation. At this point in time, I'll get Joyce to ask Joyce to stop sharing her screen. We have some special guests here that would love to talk to you guys about a grant opportunity or an opportunity that's out there through the Community Foundation, the City of Gainesville, and the University of Florida. So with that being said, I will have Carissa come on through.
Thanks, Dave. So I am here. My name is Carissa Raskin. I'm the Civic Collaboration Specialist from the City of Gainesville, and I am here with my colleague, Andrew Tejas, who is the Director of Collaborative Initiatives at the University of Florida. Andrew, you want to say hi?
I sure can. I think you already said hi for me, but happy to be here, and we'll share just a quick information that we have about an initiative that we've been working on for a while that's now being run in partnership with the Community Foundation.
Yes, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all. Can you see my screen? Awesome. So, so this partnership is called the Partnership for Reimagining Gainesville. And what you're seeing here is a set of 3 documents that kind of gives a high level overview. We're going to try to do this fairly quickly because I know that you guys have been engaged in a long meeting, but we are happy to follow up with anybody who has additional questions afterwards. So, as David said, this is a grant opportunity, but it is much more than just a grant opportunity. Really, what the Partnership for Reimagining Gainesville is an initiative of collaboration to empower our community members who are the ones who have great ideas about how to solve complex problems that are experienced every day in our community, and empower those who are experiencing them to be those who also solve them. And so traditionally, individuals are not always able to apply for grants. Sometimes you have to go through nonprofits or another institution. And so as individuals have ideas, we are looking to kind of break the typical mold and be able to offer microgrant assistance as well as technical assistance, mentorship, and really hand-holding through the whole process of going from an idea to a proposal to implementation of what that idea and proposal are around complex problems. So Andrew, do you wanna add anything to that?
No, I'll just jump to the next point here if you scroll down. So what does the Partnership for Reimagining Gainesville do? I mean, what we want to do essentially is identify ideas in the community that are not the ones that, as Krista said, typically get grant funding support. And we want to, provide resources from our institutions in the community to support those ideas in a way that's community led. So we want to bring a little bit of money, we want to bring expertise, knowledge, time, effort to build ideas into something that's going to have an impact in the community. We want to help to evaluate and assess those outcomes, bringing in expertise and not only from our community, but from our institutions that will then work towards sustainability of the impact and outcomes that lead to community capacity building. That's really what we're trying to do, moving away from, the idea of bringing one-time institutional support efforts that don't lead to something sustainable or impactful and meaningful for the community over the long term. So that's the whole point of doing this. And we're trying to do this in a way that eliminates a little bit of the bureaucracy that you maybe have sort of seen in relation to other grants that are out there. We're trying to streamline this, and that's why we're partnering with the Community Foundation in this, and we bring in members of the community. And we've had, I saw Carla on the call as well. She's one of our advisory council members, bringing in the community to help evaluate those ideas and identify how to move those ideas forward. The areas that we're focused on from a starting point are quite broad, but important to our community, and specifically in the area of food, education, and health and wellness. But we hope to open up to kind of after this initial pilot year to pretty much anything that's important to the community where it's needs driven from the community perspective.
So I'm gonna go ahead and skip this slide and jump down to here. So this is really important because our entire model is based on sets of values, and we believe in transparency, open communication, and mutual benefit and reciprocity. So we need to ensure that there is a benefit to everybody who is participating, and stating what the expectations are upfront helps us to do that. And so we will provide these materials for you all to review, but I just wanted to display it here that really, as Andrew said, the purpose of this program is to build capacity in the community and to empower community-driven ideas. From an institutional perspective, whether it's the city, the county, the university, or any other, large institution, we can think what we think, but the goal of this is to allow the community to do essentially that thinking, and then we come in with the supportive resources to help make those ideas a reality, and helping to workshop them a little bit and do the connection building. So we strive for creating a supportive environment. We strive for co-design. We strive for longevity of impact. We want to ensure that, exactly as Andrew said, these aren't one-off projects, but things that have the ability to pilot through the support that we're offering, but then also have a plan for sustaining the impact. We don't want any more of we don't necessarily want to support the one and done projects that kind of tick a box and then leave and never come back to have the maintenance that the community is really in need of. So I know this is very fast, and there's a lot to digest here, so we will share this with you certainly. And just very quickly, this model is kind of the working process for how we plan to engage with our community members. So they have an idea, they share their idea with us. This section here of the triangle of idea enhancement essentially is whether it's funding resources, technical assistance tools, research partnerships. There's a number of different ways that we can support projects, and we work with those ideas to be able to get them to the stage where they are thought out into the form of a proposal, so that just as the workshop you all engaged in terms of grant writing, we help to do some of that assistance so that you can submit your proposal for funding, which is reviewed by our advisory council made up of community members themselves. And goes through our process that we continue to work with, hopefully for the outcome of building community capacity. Whether or not a specific project is quote unquote successful really is determined based on what the outcome is for the relationship building and the ability to take an idea to the next level, more so than I would even say any specific tangible outcome. So that is our 5-minute presentation. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to stay on to take them, as I'm sure Andrew is as well. But thank you for the opportunity. And again, we'll share this material with you all. And I will stop sharing so I can see faces.
There I am. Hey, all right. So guys, because we are so crunched with time and we are about 2 minutes over, I want to thank everyone again for joining us and attending with us. I'll make sure to provide the information to the Partnership for Reimagining Gainesville, so you have the details in the follow-up email going forward. Also in the chat, you'll see there's additional information on how to get information about PRG, or the Partnership for Reimagining Gainesville. It's over at cfncf.org/PRG. Now, with this final minute, I'm going to explain the grant process for those of you that have attended all 3 other grant writing workshops. What we're going to do is over the next week, we're going to go ahead and send invitations out to those of you that have, and then we are going to work with Joyce on reviewing those grants, because we want to make sure that as we open this grant application process and you go through it, we continue that education. Right? That's the most crucial and important part of this, is that we're all continuing to learn. So through conversations with Joyce, Joyce is actually going to provide feedback on the grant applications that you guys bring over or send over. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is drouNtree@cfncf.org. If you are here on this meeting, you have received several emails from me at this point. But again, if you have any questions, you can always email me or email us at office@cfncf.org. Thank you guys again for your time this morning, for your time over the last 3 months, and a huge, huge, huge thank you to Miss Joyce Wilson from Unity Family Community Center. She has just been such a joy and a pleasure to share her wealth of knowledge and her expertise on this field of grant writing, and I hope that you guys got something fantastic from this, and we look forward to seeing you guys at some of our upcoming presentations in the future. Thank you so much, and have a great day. Bye, everyone.